Everybody loves a good budget commander in Rise of Kingdoms, so today we're going to go over the 7 best 5511 legendaries in the end game, because sometimes you just need something to hold you over until the next release. Infantry, for example, right now at the time of recording this, we're probably not getting new infantry commanders for the next couple of months, so if you're heading into KVK, you might want something new, a new pair, something to try out, but you don't want to spend 700 sculptures. And a 5511 commander that is the first skill at 5, the second skill at 5, and the last 2 skills at 1, that only costs 190. And so if you've got some sculptures to spare, maybe you have no problem spending them on a 5511 commander to see how they'll do in the open field just until that new infantry commander comes out. Whatever the reason is, this video's got you covered. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Well, if it isn't little Miss Tiger. She heard me turn on the camera, she thinks she's getting a little treat, and she just shows up here. Hi Tiger, how are you? Okay, I'll give Tiger a treat, but you gotta like the video. Those are her rules, not mine. Liking the video is part of the deal. Okay, here's your little brown crunchy, Tiger. I know how much you love these little brown crunchies. She's getting crumbs all over southern Kalimdor over here. I've got a map of World of Warcraft. Now, as you guys know, I'm a partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing down below and click that bell. And with that being said, let's jump right in here. And the first thing that we're gonna do is what I do for all of these budget build videos, and that is a disclaimer. I'm going to give you guys a disclaimer right now, because 5511 commanders are very efficient when it comes to spending sculptures, but they're not the best commanders in the game. It is not advised to run a commander at 5511 and call them finished. Okay, that is not feasible. That is not possible anymore in Rise of Kingdoms. Back in the day, maybe you could say a few commanders were worth leaving at 5511. Really, 5551 was considered done for some commanders. But my point with telling you this is that do not expect expertise level of performance out of a 5511 commander. Okay, some of their mechanics and skills are much weaker at 5511, and so you should expect that to be reflected in your battle reports. In fact, it's typically advised to only use expertise legendaries in the very end game. Okay, but just because you should do something doesn't mean you can do something, at least not all the time. And I understand, I mean, just the fact that so many people click and watch these budget build videos is evidence in itself that there is still an appetite for budget build commanders from players who just don't have the sculptures to max something right now, but they still want to play the game, right? I mean, like, at the end of the day, we can all sit here and theory craft and min max and say this is the best thing, and oh, you only should ever use the best of the best ever, and there's no exceptions. And it's like, actually, not everyone can do that, and this is a video game after all, and sometimes you just want to play the video game with a new character. And so if you want to do a 5511, it is not technically advised for the end game meta. Your battle reports will reflect that, but the point of this video is that if you are going to invest in a 5511 commander, which are the best ones to invest in right now? Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump right into the top 7 strongest 5511 commanders in Rise of Kingdoms right now in the fall of 2026, or late summer, whatever you want to call it. And this is in no particular order, but there is one commander that I want to start with, and that is actually Hermann Prime. And there's a couple of reasons for this. I think Hermann is a commander that was beloved by many and then started to kind of show his age, and now that we see Alp Arslan as part of the archer meta, he's not in the single best archer lineup, but he does find himself in a 2 archer setup. I think that Hermann Prime kind of got a little bit of a bump in relevance there, right? But what if you're a newer player who didn't get Hermann Prime back in the day, right? This commander is 2.5 years old, so you might be cautious about dumping 700 sculptures into him. Well, good news, you kind of can use him as a budget build commander. Now, again, obviously 5551 or expertise would be better, but for 190 sculptures, you get a 3 target 2000 damage factor, skill damage AoE, and you get the poison stacks. And the poison stacks are really why you want to use Hermann, and anything that is severely poisoned is going to be absolutely shredded by your Emperor Qin with either Zhuge Liang or YSG. And so I think there is definitely something to be said about a budget build Hermann in 2026, because again, it's not worth the 700 most likely, especially if we don't know if we're getting a special KVK story commander for archers. We don't know when the next archer release is going to be, so almost certainly there's something something better coming down the pipeline. So a budget build Herman could be that sort of band-aid on your second archer march until we get something better, right? You might not want to invest in Zhuge Liang, or maybe you do have him but he's just used by your Emperor Qin and you don't want to invest in YSG or whatever the case might be, right? For 190 sculptures, honestly I think Herman is sort of the only end game archer that you could even think about as running as budget build, right? I mean, Emperor Qin kind of has to be expertise, same thing with Zhuge Liang, same thing with YSG. I mean, I guess technically you don't have to use him as expertise because really what you want is the 50% skill damage and the rage engine here. The active skill is only 1400. It's not a circle if he's not expertise, but my point is like the most budget friendly archer in the end game right now is actually Herman, because besides the active skill, his second skill gives you 40% of stats and 15% march speed, which again is not something that you get from a lot of other archers, right? I mean, if you look at Zhuge Liang, you look at YSG, you're not getting any march speed there at all. And so from a budget build commander, you're at least going to be a little bit faster than the other archers that are on the battlefield, especially because Alp has 25, right? So you're getting a total of 40% march speed on that march, which is actually quite nice. The third skill says you have a AoE skill damage bonus, which Alp is only single target, so really like that's not a huge deal here. And whenever you use an active skill, the current target loses 5% defense. Not much, but it is something. And then the fourth skill here says you take less damage from poisoned armies, okay? And when you launch a basic attack, you have a 10% chance to deal 50 damage factor, which is basically nothing, but troops hit by this damage are inflicted with 2 stacks of poison for 10 seconds. And that part of the skill does the same thing whether this is at 1 or 5, right? Whether you hit the 3 enemies with 50 damage factor or 200 damage factor, they're still getting 2 poison stacks. And that, like I said earlier, is pretty much why you're running Herman to begin with, is the poison stacks. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is going to absolutely change your open field lineup. A budget build Herman is definitely like super band-aid territory, okay? But when it comes to end game archers, he's kind of the only one that you can even think about as budget build, because everyone else kind of needs their whole kit. Like Alp for sure needs it because the chance of spreading debuffs is tied to his third skill. There's damage factor on the fourth skill. Like you really just, the expertise is good, right? Like all these end game archers need a completed expertise build besides Herman Prime, which is why I wanted to talk about him here, especially because he's slightly more relevant now that Alp Arslan is in the game. Next up is Hector, and Hector is a very interesting commander because recently we did just get Vercingetorix that landed in the game, and he has kind of been getting he's gotten the spotlight when it comes to open field leadership recently. Of course, right, the latest is often the greatest, and even if they're not, at least people are still running them, testing them, seeing how good they are, right? But the problem with Vercingetorix is that he kind of needs to be expertise. I mean, if you look at this expertise, the last line of his last skill kind of make or breaks the whole kit, really, because it says before the primary commander uses an active skill, the troop gains a 40% bonus to damage dealt for 1 second. That's insane, right? Now there's lots of other things his kit is doing, but really when you look at a commander who like doesn't deal any damage, really, I mean, there's some damage here on the fourth skill, but like that's kind of my point, right? You kind of need all of his skills in the open field, but that's not necessarily true with Hector. And again, let me be very clear, if you skipped the disclaimer at the beginning of this video, you're not going to get expertise performance out of any of these commanders because they're not expertise, right? So you're gonna get a watered down version of the commander. But when you look at 5511 for Hector, it actually is a little bit compelling, right? Especially if you're running him with cavalry, because the active skill here says for cavalry you deal 2800 to 1 target. Okay, so that's actually stronger than a commander like Hua, for example, to 1 target, and for the next 3 seconds up to 5 enemies take 5% more normal damage. So you now have a debuff on 5 targets, and that's going to make them take more normal damage, combo damage, smite damage. All of that is enhanced because they're being debuffed. Beyond that, when it comes to infantry, not great. Same thing with archers, it's nothing crazy. But the cool part about Hector is that he is leadership, right? So even though like his infantry stuff and his archer stuff is like not that interesting, at the very least it's something, right? And you could slap him somewhere if you needed to as an emergency, or later down the line, who knows, maybe the next archer that comes out is somehow really good with Hector for whatever reason, right? Like who knows? But that's the benefit of a leadership commander in the field, is that you can use them anywhere. The second skill gives you 20% march speed, 10% health, and 30% defense, so 40% of stats, all very tanky, and you get that march speed that you really want for, well, really for anybody. The third skill at 1, you take 5% less normal damage, which is half the value of the skill just by unlocking this, right? And then for cavalry, it says whenever you launch a basic attack, you have a 20% chance to launch an extra combo attack with 200 damage factor. Now that's again half the value of the combo attack damage here. You can trigger up to 3 times per second. And the cool thing here is that not only is this half the value just for unlocking it, but also one of the cool things about combo damage is combo attacks can trigger lots of things, right? Because combo attacks are basically basic attacks, and lots of talents and things in the game actually trigger off of basic attacks. And so while you're not getting the maximum damage you could be getting here, you are still getting another chance at proccing other things, right? And so the function of the combo attack is really a lot of what you love about combo attacks, not just the damage itself. And so there's still a lot of value in the skill just by unlocking it. And then the fourth skill, if you're attacking a troop on the map, for cavalry, it says every second you have a 50% chance to gain a 5% bonus to normal damage for 5 seconds, 7-second cooldown. Obviously this is way better at 5, right? It's 4 times better at 5, but again, you're mainly getting him for the flexibility and the fact that you can just use him as a combo commander, slap him as a secondary, get some bonus combo attacks here, and you get a bunch of really nice stats. And as a budget build, I think Hector is totally fine. Would I recommend it? No, but if you really desperately need somebody to use with a cavalry commander until the next calves come out, which frankly we should be hearing about those new calves at the time of recording this probably within the next week or two, I would bet by the halfway mark of August we certainly know who the next commanders are, at least, if not their skills as well. And I mean their complete skills, not just what we kind of already know. But again, I just wanted to mention Hector here, and perhaps this is the last time we talk about him in a budget build video, because he'll be so power crept by the next time we make this. It's been a very long time since I made a video like this, so the meta has changed quite a bit and it will continue to do so. With that being said, let's talk about infantry for a second, and that means we're going to be talking about Ivar the Boneless. Now this commander is actually sort of one of the inspirations for this video, because Ivar has been getting a little bit of recognition lately as a secondary to Sun Tzu Prime. And the cool thing about Ivar is that and also simultaneously not so cool thing is that only 2 of his skills you really need in the open field, right? And the other way to say that is that 2 of his other skills are useless in the open field, which really sucks, right? But the point that I'm making here is that if only 2 skills work and they're the first 2 skills, well, he's kind of a slam dunk for a 5-5-1-1, because you don't need anything more from him, right? I mean, the expertise is nice, certainly, and if you have him expertise because you're a rally lead, of course he's going to perform even better there. But his active skill is a 2500 3 target smite damage, and you gain 15 rage per second, which when you pair him with Sun Tzu Prime and you pair him with a talented Horn of Fury, you're gonna have a really nice rage engine there, on top of the fact that we did just get the charge special inscription from the Pincer 2 release, and this gives you even more extra rage when you deal smite damage. And so there's so many ways to generate rage with this pairing now, even more so than there were a couple of weeks ago even. And really, like, this 2500 AoE is just raw damage, right? I mean, it's just raw. What more do you want? It's just raw damage, raw AoE damage. And then the second skill says you get 10% health, 30% attack, and 20% march speed. And these are just, again, vanilla stats. You don't need to be, you know, in alliance territory or outside alliance territory, or there's no conditions here, right? You don't have to be in a rally or a garrison, whatever. It's just, you just get the stats, which is pretty rare for rally garrison, at least in 2026. A lot of times there's conditions to these stats, right? I mean, if we look at CPO, for example, if this commander's leading a rally, then he gains health, right? It's kind of a bummer. Whereas with Ivar, there is no restriction. There is nothing like that. And I think that's really great. Now, again, second skill, third skill, useless in the field, right? And it's not worth all the extra sculptures just to grab this for the open field. You know what I mean? So 5-5-1-1, I think our Ivar is a great commander to use behind Sun Tzu Prime. Realistically, if you're only running 1 infantry march, it's going to be Sun Tzu with Liu Che, right? Or it's going to be Sun Tzu with Bai Chi. Obviously, that's the single best infantry march. But if you're expanding to 2 and you want something budget for that Sun Tzu Prime, then Ivar is totally a commander you could use. And then you keep running the Bai Chi Liu Che and you're golden, especially right now, because we're not going to see new infantry for a couple of months. So you might not want to go all in on a new infantry commander. 700 sculptures, it's not a great time to do that. It's not the worst time to do it, but certainly it would feel bad if you dumped 700 sculptures into, you know, William Wallace right now, and then you get a brand new infantry in December and it's like, oh, he immediately hits the bench, right? Well, the better play would be to do perhaps a 5-5-1-1 an Ivar, right? And it's not going to be the best thing in the world. It's not going to melt your face off, but it's only 190 sculptures, right? And it's better than wasting the 700. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Ivar the Boneless. I think he's solid in the open field, something that you could possibly consider. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about cavalry, because we haven't talked about cavalry yet in this video. And let's talk about King Arthur. King Arthur is one of the best open field budget build commanders in the game, and he has been since he came out, and that has not changed. He is still like arguably the best even 5511 commander in the open field, and it's just because he gets so much value from the third and fourth skills. Even at one, it's insane. So the active skill is a 2800 3 target AoE. He can either be combo damage as primary or skill damage as secondary, but either way it is a very strong active skill. Okay, no matter how you cut it, 3 target 2800 AoE is insane. The second skill gives him 50% of stats, right? So if you look at a lot of the commanders we've talked about in this video, whether it's Hector or it's Herman Prime or Ivar, they all give you 40% of stats on that second skill, right? But here we see 50% of stats for the same sculpture count. 20% march speed, 30% attack, 20% health. Really nice distribution there. Not much to complain about, frankly. The third skill says at 1 you gain a 5% bonus to either combo damage or skill damage, depending on if he's primary or secondary. And then if you're attacking a field troop, that damage is multiplied by 3. Okay, so you get half the value of this skill just by unlocking it, right? And you are going to be attacking a field troop most of the time, okay, unless you're swarming down a garrison or something like that. But either way, you get 15% combo damage bonus here just by unlocking the skill, right? Really good stuff. And then the fourth skill, it says if this commander is attacking a field trip, which you will be, whenever you launch a combo attack or deal direct damage, you have a 30% chance to reduce all targets rage by 50 every second for 2 seconds. That's 100 total, 5-second cooldown, and then you have a march speed reduction, right? Now the march speed reduction is like whatever. I mean, that's not, you never really think about that. It never really feels like it moves the needle, right? Maybe it's because we take it for granted, but no one's investing in this skill for the march speed, right? Everyone's doing it for the rage reduction. And once again, you still get half the value here, and you're still moving the needle because rage reduction occurs after the enemy has already hit their rage cap. So certainly you would rather reduce their rage by 100 per second than 50, but either way you're still doing something, right? You're still getting a nice rage reduction in there. And then of course you don't get the expertise, but my point is a lot of the value here is from the massive damage. The 50% of stats was march speed, and then the bonus here is still really quite good. All in all, King Arthur remains one of the best budget build commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, and so I had to include him here, especially because we know there's a new cav coming down the pipeline, and maybe you don't want to go all in on King Arthur right now, but you've got a fight coming up, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe do 5511, and then if the next cav commander comes out and somehow replaces him, which he won't most likely, okay, if anything they're going to be paired together, I would say, or some combination of Arthur in the 2 army lineup. I can't imagine him not being in the 2 army cav lineup. I could be wrong about that, right? But his skills are just so strong, it would be very, very difficult to imagine a scenario where he's not. But going the budget route right now would make a lot of sense if you want to save a majority of the sculptures just in case he doesn't find himself in the 2 army cav lineup somehow. Moving back to infantry, let's talk about Bai Chi. Bai Chi, since day one, I've been saying is a solid 5511 commander in Rise of Kingdoms, and the reason for that is very similar to commanders like King Arthur, right? Or even Ivar the Boneless. He's just a lot of damage, and a lot of that is front loaded on the first 2 skills. I mean, the AoE in the active skill is a 5 target 2400. It's kind of insane how much damage is here, and then you have a chance at dealing even more damage to them. The second skill, just like with King Arthur, is 50% of stats, 20% march speed. Here we see that the stats are skewed a little bit more towards attack, right? So 40% attack, 10% health, but either way 50% of stats is tremendous value for that second skill. The third skill at 1, you're spending malice stacks to deal smite damage, and you also gain 10% bonus to sev wounds and rage gain speed for 1 second. And I'm emphasizing that because it's only 1 second, right? Like the buff you get here is very small. Whether this is at 1 or 5, the buff is a very short window of time. It's just one turn, right? You get 1 turn of extra sev wounds. It's like, okay, whatever, right? I mean, it's not nothing, don't get me wrong, but my point point is that even at 1, you're still dealing a little bit of smite damage, you're still getting a little bit of rage gain speed at 10%, so it's not nothing, but it was never a ton to begin with. And the fourth skill says you deal 10% more normal damage at 5, but at 1 it's 5%, right? So you get half the value of that normal damage bonus just by unlocking this skill. And when you're attacking a field troop, you gain a stacking smite damage bonus, right? And it can only stack up to 6 when you unlock this, so it's nothing crazy, right? Really, it's nothing crazy, but the expertise is certainly nothing crazy, really. I mean, like, this is the first part of this is like ridiculous, right? Severely wounding 400,000 enemy units including barbs is like you're almost never going to get that, right? Like, there's virtually 0 times where you're ever going to have that. And I personally have never been a fan of skills that sort of give you buffs as you're losing troops, right? Because it seems like it moves the needle a ton, but in reality it kind of doesn't, and it's only for 6 seconds, right? So once you hit that 50% mark, you know, you better hope you're still in combat, you better hope you're not running away for those 6 seconds, right? And then by the time you hit 15%, you're basically dead anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So the expertise is not that good on Bai Chi, even though sometimes it gets a lot of hype. I don't know why. It's not great, it's not a long duration, and there's no guarantee you're even going to get value out of it during that duration if you're not engaged in the fight. So yeah, at 5511 I see Bai Chi as a pretty good budget build commander in 2026. Now again, he's certainly better at expertise, but I will caution you guys that, like, you know, one of the easiest things for developers to power creep is damage. And if you look at Bai Chi's kit, he's really not doing anything except damage, you know what I mean? Like, he's buffing his own damage, he's got a ton of his own attack stat, like there's not much value here besides damage. And so it wouldn't be surprising to me if Bai Chi got power crept faster than we think, you know what I mean? And so having him as budget build potentially saves you like 500 sculptures for when that inevitably happens. All right, now moving back to cavalry, we have to talk about David the Fourth, because David is actually a surprisingly good budget build commander as a cavalry garrison. And the reason it's surprising is because you don't often see garrison commanders viable in the open field, and yet David is one of those commanders. I mean, the active skill is once again at 5. This is a 2800 3-target AoE, just like we saw from King Arthur, but on top of that he also cleanses 3 debuffs, either slow, poison, exhaustion, or other normal debuffs from this commander. It cleanses just 1 stack, right? But right now in 2026, with Alp Arslan of the game spreading debuffs like crazy, having David in the field to clear some of those things like poison, for example, now it's only 1 stack, right? But I mean, like, we don't have a lot of cleanses in the open field right now, and so the fact that David has that is actually pretty cool, right? Especially in the open field where you're going to get a lot of those stacks. The second skill at 5 gives you 35% defense, and then the rest of the skill unfortunately is garrison specific, but again, 35% defense, that's a nice chunk of tanky stats, right, for cavalry, which really like tanky stats right now, so it's not bad. Now, it's not 40% like we see from some other commanders on this list, and it's certainly not the 50% we see from some of the newer commanders, but either way it's not nothing, and it is solid here. The third skill is all about garrison, you just skip that. And then the fourth skill, whenever this commander uses an active skill while attacking a troop on the map, the target takes 20% more combo damage for the next 3 seconds. So this is a combo damage debuff to the target, and just by unlocking this you get half the value here, which is kind of insane, right? And you could even try to do a 5515 if you had the sculptures and you wanted to get the max value here, but even still, like, this is just going to make all of your other combo calves hit harder, which we're probably going to get more combo calves in the next couple of weeks or so. Okay, now maybe he'll be benched by then if that's the case, but my point is, like, combo damage debuffs are really great for calves. Your other cav army is going to benefit from that as well, and all of your allies who are dealing combo damage as well too, right? So again, ahead of the next cav release, not a great time to be dumping 700 sculptures into a cav commander, so maybe 190 for your upcoming fight is not the end of the world. If, like I said, you know, if you've got as many sculptures as me, I could dump the 190 here and not even notice it, right, for the next cav release. And I'm not trying to flex there, I'm just saying, like, 190 at the end of the day is not the end of the world if you're really going to get some good value out of them. I mean, think about how interesting it is that you could run a 5511 David behind a 5511 Arthur, and for less than 400 sculptures you're running around with like a pretty decent open field cav march, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best thing thing ever, but like you've got a ton of stats, double AoE, it's all combo damage, like you're cleansing your debuffs, you're draining the enemy rage, like you're doing a lot for less than 400 sculptures there. I don't know, it's compelling, even though I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best thing in the world. And again, in a perfect world, you probably shouldn't invest in any cabs right now because we see the new ones coming up. But either way, I had to talk about David because 5511, you could definitely make it work. And the last commander we're going to talk about in this video is one that does really well at 5511, but you definitely should expertise them, there's no question, and that is Sun Tzu Prime. Oh, Sun Tzu Prime absolutely pops off no matter how much you've invested in him. And if you're on your way to getting that expertise and you've only got the first 2 skills maxed, you definitely can still use him in the field because he's very strong at 5511. The active skill without the expertise is still 3000 damage factor. That's not changing at all. The only thing that's changing is the amount of smite damage that is converted to fixed true damage to the nearby enemies. Right now it goes from 20 to 30%, so you definitely want this expertise, but my point is it's still solid, right? You're still getting a majority of the value there. The second skill, once again, we see 50% of stats, and this time it's even more march speed than anything else we've talked about in this video, right? 25%, really good for infantry, 20% health, 30% attack. The fourth skill at 1 still gives you 10% defense, right? So now we actually, instead of 50% of stats, it's actually 60, which is what I'm talking about, where like he's so good even at 5511, he's better than probably anything we've talked about in this video. And on top of the defense, it says if the military sage effect is active, this commander's troop deals 5% more smite damage and has a 50% chance to deal an instance of smite damage for every basic attack with a 200 smite damage factor. That's half the value, right? I mean, really, you get half the value of this skill across the board just by unlocking it, which is super budget friendly. And then the fourth skill says you take 5% less damage across the board. Again, that's half the value, and you gain an extra 5 rage for every enemy troop that takes fixed true damage from the military sage effect, and unfortunately only have a 50% chance to deal 2% extra damage for the next 5 seconds. Okay, so it's not that much rage gain, let's be real, it's not going to really move the needle. It wasn't a ton to begin with, so to lower that even more, it's not that much, right? Like realistically, but again, for 5511, he is an absolute monster. And not only that, but unlike some of the other commanders in this video, Sun Tzu Prime is a commander that I can confidently say is a commander that you're gonna want the expertise for, and so you can dump those sculptures in and start using them right at 5511, and then you just keep pumping those sculptures into him until he's expertise, right? So all in all, Sun Tzu Prime is exceptionally good at 5511, even better the more sculptures you put into him, and he's probably the safest commander to invest in this entire list, and it's not even close. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Who do you think is the best budget build commander in Rise of Kingdoms? Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're down there, go ahead and drop a thumbs up on the video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. It really helps out the channel a ton. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing down below and clicking the bell so you're not going to miss the breaking news when we do eventually get new commanders. I'm sure they're coming. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.